Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Maro with Maro. Today's video is going to be a very straightforward one. We will be looking at some basic concepts on Riverpod, and also we're going to build a simple application that's going to display news content to solidify what we're going to learn. So what we have here is the default Flutter app that comes in when you run Flutter create. So I take the liberty to create that so we'll move a little faster. And you see here that what we do, we have a stateful widget for the homepage, and we have the counter which is called with set state to increase the count when we click on the button. So just go to where the button is clicked. Just going to take out all these comments to save us time as well. So this is where the button is clicked. So when you click on the floating action button, it calls on the increment counter method. Now that method uses set state to increment the counter. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this using Riverpod. That's like the basic thing we can do first. So you see, clicking this increases the count here. So we're going to take out all of this, right, and use Riverpod to run this same example, then move forward to look at other things that we can do with Riverpod before building out our news app. So first things first, we have to import Riverpod. So we run Flutter of add Flutter Riverpod. Okay, so now that we're done importing Riverpod, I'm going to zoom in here a little so we can see. Alright, so the interesting thing with Riverpod is the Riverpod uses providers, right? And these providers are all global, so you could actually call them from any part of your app. Now, in order for us to be able to use Riverpod, we have to wrap our app in what we call a provider scope. So we'll go up here to where we run the first part of the app, which is my app, and we'll wrap it with the provider scope. So we're going to wrap this with a widget and call it provider scope. Now, this ensures that Riverpod is available all through our app. Okay, so we're just going to import this, and then we can have this. Now, we'll have to take this out and bring it up. Okay, so now we have this. This means that we can now have access to Riverpod all of our apps. So the first thing we're going to do is, just since this is an example, we'll just create the Riverpod counter controller out here, right? I'd like you to create it out here. So counter. Now all we'll do here is create a state provider for Riverpod. So we have different providers in Riverpod. We have provider which just gives you data, right? That's very useful when you're trying to work with repositories and you want to get the repository and ensure that you have that all going all around. So I prefer to use that with classes and stuff like that. And then we have the state provider, which provides data but also allows you to update the data. Now, provider will not allow you to update data, but state provider will allow you to update data. And then we have the future provider, which is used to make asynchronous calls. Same thing with stream provider. And then we have the notifier provider. Yes, we have notifier provider and so on. So today we're going to focus mainly on provider, state provider, and the async notifier provider. So for this, we're going to use, I'm just going to call this counter provider and set it to state provider. And this is going to, okay, we have to import Riverpod first before we move on. So we're going to import Riverpod here. And then this is going to return an integer, right? So 0. And that is it. So now this is what we're going to use to replace what we have here. So if we come back here and we will be able to get the provider here. And to do that, we're going to need what we call a consumer, right? Now, generally, you could create a consumer class, right? So I'm going to take out the entire homepage here, the entire homepage that we have, and create a new one. So we'll take this all out and create a new one, right? So we're going to create a new a new home page, right? So I prefer to use a stateless widget, and within the stateless widget, I'm going to have the consumer, right? So you see here we can have the stateless widget or consumer stateless widget, consumer stateful widget, whichever you want. So I'm going to create a normal stateless widget and call it my home page as well. Okay, and then this returns a container already, but we do not want that, so I'm just going to return a scaffold, just like we had before. Oh, spelled that wrongly. So we'll have a scaffold, and then the scaffold has a body, right? And the body is going to be center, and now it's going to have a child of the child will be a column, and that column is going to take children that will be text fields, right? So we have text. Now the first one is going to be you have pushed this button this many times. All right, I'm going to take this out so we can see what I'm doing here. All right, and then okay, I'm just going to change this to P, and I'm also going to take this out because we do not need it anymore. All right, so you have clicked this button this many times, and this has to be const. Then we can go on to create another text now. Now, this new text we're going to create is going to take the child as the value that we have from this state provider, right? So if we come back here, this is a stateless widget, right? So what we're going to do now is, since we only want the consumer to affect that child, I prefer to create a consumer there, right? So this will be a consumer. Instead of creating extending the consumer widget like most would prefer to do, I prefer to do this, right? So here we're going to bring in the context, the ref, and the child. Now this is the widget ref that we're going to get from Riverpod. So this now would allow us have access to Riverpod. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to return a text widget. Now that text widget is going to take in the child that we're going to get from this counter provider. So we can come here and say final counter text. I'm going to say counter text is equal to, so counter text is ref.watch. So what we're doing now is, when you're watching a provider, it means you are listening for changes. You're checking to see if anything changes, and then you update as the changes happen. So we just bring in counter provider. I think that was the name we gave to it. And we can also import this now. So yes, we import this. And here we have that. So if you come here, you'd see that it tells you that this is a type int. Now this is looking at the data that we have been provided from this counter provider. So if you come back here, the text here is going to take in counter text dot to string. So now that we have this, we can actually get the text that we have there from here. But there's no way for us to change this yet, right? So to change this, we're going to use ref.read. So we're going to also bring in a floating action button. And we're going to bring in the floating action button, which you can get from the scaffold as well. So we're going to just go floating action button. And our floating action button takes in a widget, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring in a container. And it's going to have a child of icon. The child will be an icon. So we have icon, and this will take in icons dot add. All right, that's all we need to do, and we can actually, seems like, okay, we can actually get we can actually change the color here. So let's make this const first, and then we'll change the color here to, so color would be colors.white, and then the color of the container as well will be colors.blue. Okay, that's wrong. Colors of blue, and we can actually use this. Now this container is going to take, we're going to need to be able to increment when we click on the button, right? So let's hit save first and see what we have so far. We have to do a hot restart here, so we can actually get access to our provider scope. Okay, so that's why we had this error. So now that we have this, you see our buttons, our widget is looking funny, right? So we're going to rework the whole thing here, and to do that, we just come here and make sure this is aligned to the center. So main axis alignment, dot center, and then we hit save, and that's going to push the text up here to the center. And then we also want to increase the size of this text, right? So style, we're going to do that with the style, and then text style, and we'll say font size. Font size would be, let's give it 30, and then font weight is going to be font weight .w, let's say 700. That's for bold. So we hit save, and we can view those changes as well. Yeah, so next thing now is to customize our floating action button. So the container there needs something, right? So I'm just going to wrap this with an inkwell, right? Because clicking this is not going to do anything right now. So we need to make this actually be a button. So I'll wrap this with the widget, inkwell, and then on tap. Now here's the interesting part, right? So when we tap this button, we want to be able to increment the counter, right? And to increment the counter, we have to start working with this. So what we'll do here is we're going to use ref.read. So ref.read gives you access. Okay, so in order for us to actually get access to widget ref from the floating action button, we need to actually push this whole thing up here. So what we're going to do to save time, instead of using the floating action button up here, we're just going to bring this, copy it down, and put it within this part here, right? So we're going to promote this up, so this whole part will be wrapped. So the column is going to come here, and then we'll bring this text, we'll bring it and put it down here. All right, and then we're going to take this out now, since we no longer have any use for it. Okay, well, we need to bring this alignment thing down here too. Okay, and then we take this out. All right, so now we have all of this. We can then bring our container down here, right? So below this text, we're going to bring in our container, and this, yes. So there. Now, when we tap this, we're going to go into ref.read. So we're going to tap into the widget ref, and we're going to read the provider, which is the counter provider, and then we're going to check for its notifier and also check for its current state. So what happens is we increment it. So instead of using equals sign there, we'll just increment and say plus plus. So what this does is it reads the the provider, checks for its current state and then increments, right? Since this is a provider that's giving us a string, right? So we need to make this const as well, and then we can hit save and proceed. Yeah, so now we have this. Now this, I know this UI looks ugly, but we're just going to manage with this for now. And I'm also going to take out this floating action button from here because we no longer need it. Now if we hit this, you see what happens? The provider is being incremented. So you see it's increasing without a set state or anything like that. So we're using Riverpod generally to work with this. So that's how you use a state provider in Riverpod. You can also use the state provider to do whatever you want. So we could actually use a provider to get the text that we have here. So let's say we copy this, or we take this out now, all right? Take this whole text out, and then we come here and we say final, and we say text provider is equal to provider. Now, since this is not going to change, we can just we can use a provider for this. We do not need a state provider for this. So we just paste this, and then we're done. So this becomes a provider for text, for string, right? So it provides a string for us. So if we come back here now, and within this text, we'll definitely need to take out this const, and then we'll just come here and say ref.watch, and we put in the text provider. Now this is going to get us the exact same text that we had before, right? So when we hit save here now, it's going to give us this same text that you have pushed this button many times, and you see text doesn't change. So that's how you use a state provider generally. We're going to move straight now to building out our news app. Now in our last video, we looked at how to integrate APIs with Flutter. So today we're going to be doing the exact same thing, but this time we're going to be using Riverpod to display the data that we're going to get. We're going to use Riverpod while getting data and also displaying data. So stay with me while we move on to that. Okay, so I took the liberty to create what seems like an architecture pattern for this part of the tutorial. So we no longer need this. I'm going to just delete this. Okay, we no longer need that. And yeah, we're going to have some red lines around here. We're going to take out all these red lines as well. We're going to just proceed. I'll just cut this, right? I'll take the whole of the home page here and paste this in a new file where we'll have our home page, right? So this is the screens, new screen. Okay, so the new screens, we're going to paste this now, and we're going to have to bring this in. So bring material, and yes, import Riverpod as well. So we no longer need this. And generally we don't need a whole lot of this stuff anymore. So what I'm just going to do is I'll take this out for now, and I'll just return a container for now. Okay, and there you have it. So we're going to import this back into our home screen. Where is it? Okay, and we can take this up now. Alright, so we have a clean app now. If we hit save, it's going to give us a blank screen. Alright, what we want to do now is we want to create a news app. Now, for us to be able to create the news app, we're going to be using the Guardian API. Right, so it's going to go straight down to the Guardian API. And for you to get your Guardian API, just go to openplatform.theguardian.com, and then you can click on Get Started to come here, and you have to register for a developer key. So since I already have a key, I'm not going to go through this rigorous process anymore. I'm just going to grab my key, and then we can use that. we're going to go back to documentation and find out what we need to do to get the content that we require to build our app, right? So we have different endpoints. We have the content, we have tags, sections. To get content, you just go to content.guardianapi.ever, right? So if we open this up, we'll see what it displays for us. So okay, now we have one response, the entire response here, and we have the results, which is going to, which borders on different sections. So we have this section for football, we have a section for articles, right? And then there's a web URL, there's an API URL, there's a web title for news update, right? So the important thing here is we want to be able to get this, right? So we have 10 items. I think 10 items should be good enough for us to start, right? So what we're going to make use of would be the type. We're going to use the type. We're going to use the section name. We're going to use the publication date. We're going to use the web title because that's going to be the title. I think that should be it, right? So we'll go back to. Okay, I'll just like to copy this. So I'll copy one response now, so that we can use this to build out our data, right? So we'll come back to our news, go to our domain, and then open the news model. So the news model will create a new class and say news model. So the news model is going to have all of this, right? So first thing, we'll paste this so we know what we're working with, right? I'm going to cut this screen into two so that we can have one part over here. Okay. So everything we're going to work with is actually a string. So we just go string. First is the type. So we start from the top. So type, and then string section name. Okay, this should be string, not string. I don't even know how that sounds. Okay, so we have string section name, and then the next is going to be the publication date. So that's also a string, and that's we're just going to call that pub date, right? So we keep the name short so we can move quickly. And then we have the title, so string title, and then we have the URL. Now we're not going to be using the URL today, but we're going to use it. We're going to need it, so we're going to keep it, and then maybe subsequently we're going to have another app where, sorry, another tutorial where from this same app we'll be able to click on the news item and then navigate to that link and load it up in a web view or something like that. So we have the string, and then web URL. Web URL is what we're going to use. So web URL, and now we can create a constructor for this news model, and we're going to have to require all the items we have here. So this dot, yes, okay, update. Why do I keep spelling wrongly? Okay. All right, so we have this. So for if you followed my previous tutorial on API integration, you know that we're going to get a factory method here now and say news model dot from JSON. I think I saw a video once where someone said this is JSON, not JSON. So, well, So the news model now is going to take in a map, right, of string, right? So, and we're going to call it news. Yeah, just news. And then we'll go in here and we're going to return the constructor that we created, news model. And for the pop date, we're going to just do news, and then news we're going to do, we're just going to copy and paste this so we don't make any mistakes. So pop date is web update, section name is section name. All right, okay, so we have the title, which is the web title, and so this will be news and web title. And then for the type, it's just going to be type. And then for the web URL, I think that's it. Yes, web URL. News, web URL. And then that. So with this, we'll be able to get each of the items that we are going to require to build out our news app and push them in. So next thing is we're going to go to, now for us to be able to communicate with the server, right, we need to import HTTP. So we do flutter pub. Okay, so now that we have that, next thing we're going to do, I think we need to close this now, we don't need it anymore. So we'll go to the new service and we start working with that too. So we say this is a new service class. Now this class is where we're going to make our communication directly with the server. So we need to import HTTP here. And we're going to import it as HTTP. Okay, so we can come here now and say future. This is going to return a list of news models, right? So list news model. We can import this. So news model get news, right? And this will be asynchronous. And then within here, we're going to first, we need our guardian link. So we have our link, right? So it comes to say URL is equal to this final, and then this is going to include the key. So our key is stored in apputils dot news key. So that's what we need. What does it say here? Okay, so we have to mark this as const. Okay, so there we have it. So this is the link we're going to be using to get our news items. So we know the drill, right? So final response is going to be http.get uri.parse URL, and then from this response we say if response, usually response should be 200, response or status code. Oh, sorry, we need to await this for us to be able to get hold of status code and body. So the status code is less than 300. Now, if this is less than 300, it means it's going to be successful, and we can start manipulating the data that we have within it. So what we're going to do now is, if it is successful, we're going to convert it first. We're going to decode the JSON that's going to be returned. So this will be final JSON response. JSON response is going to be JSON decode. We're going to bring in that convert now, and we're going to just pass in the response body. Now, since we have this, right, this is going to grant us access to what we had when we looked at this initially, right? So that's going to grant us access to what we had to this. So first things first, we're going to need to look through the response, and then each of the results is what is going to contain what we have. So first, we'll go back here now and say, okay, first we need to have our empty list, right? So in the empty list of news items, list of news model is going to be list and is going to be empty. Okay, now in here we're going to need to add items to this. So so first things first, we need to check if we have items in that news list, right? So for final item in JSON response. So JSON response, inside JSON response, first thing is response, and then we go from response and we check results. So if we look at this again, take another look at this, we're going to see that we have response first. Now response is a map, and within that map we also have something called results, right? So these results are what we're going to be looking at. These are what make up each list, right? So for each item in this list, we're going to be adding the item to the list that we have here. Right, so if we have an item in that list, we're going to simply go and say list dot add news model from JSON, and we say, okay, let's just change this to news, right? So we'll be safe, news, all right, and we're done with that. Then once this is done, let's say, okay, so else, let's say else, in case this does not return, we're going to throw could not fetch news. All right, and we're going to leave that as that, and then we're going to return this. So return list. Okay, there. So our news model is complete. Our news service is complete. Next thing is we're going to create our news repo, right? All right. So to create our news repo, we're going to go to our repository and we create class and say news repo. Now this is going to have, so we're just going to call our news news service, and this will be news service. Making this final. Okay, it says here that this must be initialized, right? Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to create a constructor for this and say news repo. It is not, it's going to then be an instance of news service itself. Okay, then we can proceed from here now and make our call, right? So same drill, future and all we need to do is really return await news service dot get news, right? And that practically does it for us here. So the next step now would be to go to our presentation folder, open up our controller, and then the news controller. Now, generally, you could use a future provider for this, but I personally prefer to use an async notifier provider for this. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a class. I'm just going to go ahead and create a class for the async notifier. So we have async news notifier, and it's going to extend the async notifier class. So async notifier, sorry, this should be extends. So extends this class, and this is going to return to us a list of news items. Now what happens here is news model, sorry, the news model. So what happens here is each time this is open, it just goes ahead and makes a call for us. Alright, so we need an override here, so we're going to implement the override as well. Yes. Okay, so first thing is we're going to create the method or the function that's going to make this call for us. So list of news model, get news as well, and this should be asynchronous too. And then from here, sorry, I need to put braces here. Okay, parenthesis, braces. Okay. All right. So next thing is, since we have the async notifier class, right? We have access to the state and the ref directly from within here. So first thing is to set the state. So the state would be, the state now is going to be loading. All right, so the first thing we want to do is show that this is loading. So async loading, and then we want to be able to get our news, right? So I'll just create the empty news as well that like we had before. So list of news model, and we're going to call this list, and this will be an empty list, and there. So before we go on, because the next step now would require us to actually get the repo, right? So we're going to make use of provider. Remember I said before that you can use provider to get repositories and classes like that. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to get that. What we'll do simply is, okay, so we're going to create a provider that will return the repository. So we say news repo provider, and this will be set to provider, and this will be ref, and simply just the provider. So news repo, yes, and we have that, right? So this should do the work for us. Now next thing we need to do is come down here and then set the state to whatever it is that we're going to get when we await the results from this async guard, async value.guard, right? So now async value.guard is going to help us. Async value.guard prevents us from having to write different stuff for, prevents us from writing try catch blocks, right? So this is automatically going to check when there's an error. It's going to catch the error and then sets that as well. So this is what a try catch looks like, but this is what the async notifier looks like. So really straightforward, and there's no issues here. So we come here now and we set our list to the value we're going to get when we await the value of, so ref.watch. Okay, no, I'm going to use ref.read here now. So ref.read, we have the news repo provider, and then we're going to get our news, and that's basically it, right? So here we're going to return news, return list, sorry. Here too we're going to return list, sorry, return list, and then we are done. So with this we should be able to get our data. Now, the reason why I like this will be shown when why I like to use async notifier provider is going to be shown when we get to the next stage where we'll be implementing this in our UI. So first, I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to also take out this unimplemented error and return get news. So up here, for us to be able to access this, we need to also have our async provider. So async news provider would be async notifier provider, and we're going to pass in some arguments. First is the class that we have here, which is the async news notifier, and then we're going to also have the list of news models that we have, and then we can close this. Open this up and simply return. We're going to return the async news notifier class. Okay, and voila, we have everything we need from Riverpod already. Next thing now is to go to our screens and get the data. So I'm just going to run through all we did so far now. First, we started by creating this news model class, where we passed in the strings that we require from the API, from the Guardian API, to be able to create our news. And then we moved on to the news service. We'll be able to get the data from the news. So when we fetch the news, we'll be able to pass it out and then get the news through the repository and then down to the news controller. And from the news controller, we'll be able to now display the data in our news screen. Okay, so let's get started from the news screen. So first thing we're going to do here, we're not going to be needing the center anymore, so I'm going to take it out. Let's remove this widget, and this is going to return a list of news items, remember? But for us to do that, we need to be able to catch the news items first. So news list will be ref.watch. So we're going to watch, and we're watching for the async news provider. Okay, and then we can import the class now. Yes. Okay. All right. So now that we have the async news provider, next thing we want to do is, I think I'm just going to add an app bar here, right? So the whole body of the scaffold will be below the app bar. So app bar. And then I'll just add a title. Title takes in a widget, so I'm going to add a text widget. The text is going to be news. Okay, and then this should be constant. This const, and there. So now we have this about async news provider. So the next thing we're going to look out for here now is we want to return the news list. The news list is what it will determine the data that will return. So when it has data, we're going to return a widget. When it has no data, we return a widget. When it has an error, and then it's loading. So first, I want to start with the loading state. To return, we're going to return first. I would like to return a secular progress indicator. All right. So return secular progress indicator. That does it. And then when there's an error, we need to get hold of the error and also the stack trace. So stack trace, and then we want to return a column. And the column will take children. Now this children will be text widgets, right? So just a text widget, and then the text is going to show the stack trace dot to string. Okay, and then I think that should do it. Up here will be what we'll do when we get data, right? So when we get data, we want to return a list view. So the data will be news. Let's just say news, right? So we're going to then return a list view, the builder. So list view, the builder, and then the item builder is going to take in the context and the index, and then we're going to return for each news item, right? We're going to return a container. Now that container is going to take a child that will be a column. Now this column will have children, and these children will be text widgets, right? So remember the data that we got before. I'm just going to process. Now the data that we said we're going to make use of, where is it? So from the news model, we said we're going to make use of, okay. So we said we're going to make use of the publication date, the section name, the title, the type, the web URL. Okay, so simply what we're going to do here is we're going to have, for the container now that we've created, right, each child, I think we should give this a decoration. So decoration, so we have box decoration, and within the box decoration we can have the color property. So color is going to be colors.54, and then we can have other properties. Well, those properties are not important right now. What is important is we want to get data from the list that we have. So we now have, when Riverpod returns the data to us, we're going to then have a, where is it? Okay, here it is. We're going to have this down so we can see clearly. So when there's data, we're going to use the data now to populate this. Now if you check this, you can see that we have the where is it? Item, whatever is it? Item count. Alright, so the item count is going to be the news dot length, because we're expecting to get a list from there, right? If you check here, you see it tells you it's a list of news models. So the length of the news of the list is also going to determine our item count. So next thing now is, in this column, we're just going to display a text widget, right? The text is going to just have news, yes, news, and then taking the index, and then that news item's name, right? Title, sorry. So the title is also going to take. So we're going to give this a max line of 2, so we can go down if it needs to. And then I think this looks good already, right? With this, we're just going to try this out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a print statement, right, to our new service, so we can know if we actually get something from the response. So we're going to print here response dot body. Okay, I was supposed to do a hot restart, so we're going to just wait for this to finish and then do a hot restart. Okay, so you can see that we actually got data, but it's all jumbled up, right? We've not created enough space for the containers yet. But you see what what we're able to achieve. We were able to get the loading state and all of that. Now we can decide to implement on refresh, pull to refresh, and all of that, but we won't do that for now. So we're just going to make this look a little more presentable, and then we can proceed from there. Back to where we were before. That's the new screen. Okay, so here on the new screen, we're going to make this look a little better. And instead of this, we're going to use, okay, I think we should just pick a color from one of these. Okay, all right, I think we're going to go with this color. And then we are going to give it a padding. So a padding of edge insets.all, edge insets.all, and that will be 8. Let's just do 10, right? And then this should be const as well. Now, if you save this, you'd see that, that there's going to be more space between them. All right, so yeah, you see now it's beginning to come out. And then we're going to add a margin as well. So we'll add a margin. So margin. So we're going to add a margin of edge insets dot symmetric, and then we're going to do a vertical margin of 5. Okay, and then when you hit save, you see we're going to have more space between these. Now if you scroll, you see we're having all the items from our list. All right, so it's still looking a little ugly, so we're going to do some more work on this. The color needs to change first. So okay, I think we can work with that. And then since this is the title, we're going to make it a little bolder than this. So let's go to the style now, the text style, and we'll say font style dot bold. We're going to use the font weight instead. So font weight dot bold. Okay, and then we can increase the size of the fonts as well. So font size, so this would be 20. Okay, so we're going to have the title, and then that's looking too big. Let's take it down a little. So this is going to be 16. Okay, so 16, and then we'll be able to get our, okay, so I think this works. Now for the main axis alignment of this column, I'm going to make it space between. So main axis alignment dot space between. Okay, now when we space between, we're doing this so when we add the other items, right, they will go neatly under. So next thing now is we're going to add a row underneath this. So I'm just going to copy this. Okay, I'm going to copy this and then paste it, and I'm going to change a few things. So take out max lines, no more maximum lines, and font weight is going to be different. It's going to be light, or let's use normal now, and let's use, okay, and then we're going to have this as 12, and this is no longer going to be the title. It's going to be the, I think we should use the publication date first, right? So we're going to wrap this with a row. So when this is wrapped in a row, we're going to then make the main axis of the row to be also space between, so it's evenly spaced. So main axis alignment dot space between, and then we can add another text, right? So then we have this. Now this is going to be the type, right? I feel like the type should actually come before the publication date. So we're going to save this. Now if we hit save here, you're going to see that okay, I'm going to add a sized box here as well. Or do I need to? No. Okay, I think I do need to add a sized box. So sized box, and this is going to be a height of say 10, and then it has to be constant as well. Okay. Oops. Okay. All right. So we have this, and I think our text is good enough to see. For the margin here, I'm going to add some margin to the side as well, or maybe not. We just leave it that way, all right? Okay, we hit save here now. We're going to see some changes. Now you can see that the date that we have here is in date time, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first, let me see, this is article, everything here is an article. Okay, I think I put the wrong thing here, so I'm going to use the type now, section name, yes, section name. So the section name we need to capitalize. Do we need to? Okay, let's see. All right, so I was saying, you see this word news, okay, so we have what we need now. I'm going to increase the size a little bit. Let's make this 14, right? And this too, same thing, 14. Now, if you look at the date here, you see that it is looking like we have something in date time, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to create an extension. Now that extension is what's going to allow us format this. Before we do that, I would want us to look at a principle I really like to work with a lot, and that's abstraction, right? So you see this whole container, we're going to take this out and then bring it in as just the news list item, right? So simply just a few lines of code once we take this out. So we're going to try to extract the widget here, and we say news card. Okay. All right. So we have that news card. There seems to be a problem somewhere. Yeah. So for us to use the news card, we're going to have to bring in the final string date. This will be date, and then we're going to have title, and then we're going to have section. All right, so those are the three things that we need. So this, we'll cut this out and put title here, and we'll cut this out and put section name, section, put section, and then this is the date. So date. All right. So we're going to also require all of this to be imported and required here. And we'll come back up here now and we add each of those, right? So add date, add the section name, and then finally we'll add a title. Okay, so we can start pasting each of these now, right? So we have the news title, and then we have the section, and then we have the date. So I like to keep my code really neat and tidy. So you see we only have one line of code here to show us what we actually had before. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to cut this and take it somewhere else. Okay, so come here and within our screens we'll just create a widgets folder and say news card dot let's separate this. Okay, yeah, then we paste this here. Okay, so we need to bring in the material. Okay, so we'll come back here and then we have to import this. So this makes your code a little more readable, and yeah, I think you're actually going to like this. Now we have this, right? If you come in here, where is it? When you'd see that you can skip loading on refresh, you can skip loading on reload. You can also decide to skip the error if you want to, right? So all of these, you could do whatever you want to do, but this is basically how you get your data from Riverpod. Yeah, I just did something, so let's save, and This is what we have now. Yeah, I also said I was going to use that extensions. Oh yeah. There seems to be an issue with what we have now. I must have pasted these things the wrong way. So let's go back there and where is it? Okay, so we have title, we have section, and then we have date. Okay, so I think I did the wrong thing from here. So we have date and I put in the title. So yeah, so this should be pop date, and then this should be title. Okay, if we hit save now, we're going to get our beautiful code back, beautiful UI back. All right, so there. Now we have this. You could do whatever you want to do with the UI. All right, this is not to tell us how best to build UI, just to work around Riverpod. So the next thing we'll be doing now is to convert this to an actual time with the datetime feature. Right, so I'm just going to create an extension here. So just going to create a folder for extensions, and then say or I could just, I think I'm just going to put that in utils since we're only going to use one extension here. So extensions dot, right? And then we'll come here, we say extension get date on string. So we're going to, this extension is going to be working on a string, and then we're also going to return a string, right? So we have string get date, okay, and then we're going to return the data from there. Sorry, this should be get date. Okay, all right, so we have this. Now the first thing we're going to do is the string that we're going to pass in here. From my extensions video, you'll be able to learn how to do this. So the string that's going to be passed in here is what we're going to work with to get what we require. So first thing is we need to convert that to a date time. So we need to import date time. So date time is received. We're going to use received time here. Received time is date time dot parse, and then we'll paste in, we'll pass in the time, the datetime string that we received, right? So all we need to do now, okay, first I'm going to create a string, an empty string here. String time is an empty string, and then this, yes. So string now, well, this is just, I think we could work without this. So we could just return a string, right? So we need to return a string. We'll return a string, but it's an empty string. So what we're going to do now is use the string interpolation method and use the received time now. Received time dot day, and then received, yes, okay. Received time. Oh, sorry, this is in the wrong place. Okay, bring this out and say received time dot month, and then we're just going to copy this, right? Okay, and then we can paste this here. And then change this to year. Okay, we're going to change this to year. So receive time dot year, and then we'll give a space, right? You know, we could give more than one if you want to, and you could use the tab key and yes, create enough space. And then you could use the received time. I'm going to paste that again now. So received time dot, it has the hour, it has the minute, and then it also has the second if you so choose, but I think we could leave it this way. Alright, so what we'll do now is we just use this and then go back to our new screen, and then where our date is, so from the pub date, we could just put dot and paste that, and now import our extensions class. Right, once we do that and we hit save, this is then going to format the date time we have here according to what we want it to be from what we defined in our extensions. Right, this space is looking too big and it looks a little awkward. I'm going to take that out now. So, oh, and we have this dash here too. So we can hit save from here, and then we have our whole app, right? So what we've successfully done today is we've been able to create a news app that updates data or gets its data using Riverpod, right? And we've been able to look at how to use a provider in Riverpod. I'm going to go to the controller. Where is it? Okay, so we've been able to look at how to use a provider in Riverpod. We're able to use an async notifier class, an async notifier provider in Riverpod. Next thing I want us to just look at before we draw the curtain on this is how to use the state provider in cases like this, right? So we want to be able to determine which of these we select when we click on them. We're going to come here now and say selected news would be state provider. And while this can actually return anything, right, I would want us to, it could return a nullable data, but I want us to actually return real data. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy, where is our news model? We're going to copy the data that we have here, right? So if we come here and say news model first, let's do from here. So we have news model, and then we have this, right? So this publication date. All we're going to do now is just copy the data from here, right, and paste here for each one of them. And then the web title, that's a title. And then type, the type we had here was article, right? So article. And then for web URL, we have this. Now we copy this. And then for section name, we have football. I'm just going to put football here. Right? I think that was what we had too. Okay, sport. Was it? Yeah, football. All right, so with this, we have a state provider that provides a news model. All right, so we want to use this to update the selected news model when it is actually selected. So we'll go back to the news screen, right? And we want to make this news card selectable. So we go into this news card, and then we'll wrap this container. Instead of having it just like this, we're going to wrap it with an inkwell as well. So inkwell, and then when it is tapped, this is inkwell. Now when it is tapped on tap, we're going to pass in on tap, and then we're going to create on tap here as a function. So final function on tap, and then we'll come here and say, okay, let's just push it in from here. Okay, so we have that. Then we'll come back in here now, and we need to add that here too. So on tap, so it creates a function. Now all we need to do is we're going to check what we have here. So from here now we have on tap. So sorry, final selected item is the data that we will get when we watch the selected news provider. So when we watch the selected news provider, the data we get is going to be what we need. So this we're going to just update. So ref.read selected or okay, yes. We may not need this. Okay, well, I think we're going to so ref.read. Okay, so selected news dot notifier, and then we grab its current date, and then we set it to the news that we're currently on, so index, and that's it. All right. Now, for now, we're not going to need this here. Okay, well, yeah, we will need it. So I would like us to actually print out the selected item dot. So we're going to print out the section name or the title. So we're going to print out title. Now, just to be sure that we're not getting things wrong, we're going to look at what we have in the controller. So the title here is promotion and relegation changes. Okay, so when we hit save now, go to our new screen. I'm going to pull this up a little so we can have a good idea of what we're working with. And then we'll come here. When you click on this, it says promotion and okay. If you click on this, all right, because how we're trying to get this, so we want to just paste this here, right? Hit save, and then try this again. Now we're getting data, but it's getting the data from the previous one, and then showing us that. Okay, so yes, yeah, we're getting the correct thing now. So the reason why that was happening was because we're actually tapping into this before that. So we're going to take that out, and then we can work with this. So if you want to, I'm just going to change it to debug print. Okay, and then we can hit save, and we know what we're working with. So we have been able to work with all of this. We've been able to look at how to use the provider, right? So basically, you see, we've been able to build a functional news app, right? Although it's just getting us a list for now, with simple aspects of provider with simple aspects of Riverpod, not provider, sorry, using the provider, using state provider and async notifier provider. So basically, with these three, you can actually get your fingers dirty, get your hands dirty, and get really good at using Riverpod and get confident. Now, just a little sneak peek, right? In the next video, we're going to look at how we can use the data that we've gotten from here now to load up another screen that's going to show us the details of the news we have here. So when we click on it, we'll have another screen that would load up a web view that would show us what this headline says in detail. So please like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned. Thank you very much. Bye.